Probably a couple hundred years before.
Oh, wow!
President Lincoln, George Washington, Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen?
That's President Kennedy, you idiot! Well, same difference. I mean, he played Kennedy once.
That's a clip from the 80s classic movie, The Goonies. Well, it was on that set, 1984, that actor Corey Feldman says that he met Michael Jackson and the two became friends. So in the wake of the startling allegations made in the film Leaving Neverland, made by the two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, Feldman initially criticized the film, calling it one-sided, without evidence, saying his friendship with Michael Jackson was never inappropriate. But now the actor is clarifying some of his comments, saying, quote, Michael was my friend, but that does not mean I condone any harmful behavior, physical or mental. This is new information to me. It takes me time to absorb and process. And we want to welcome now actor Corey Feldman. Thanks for being with us. Let's pick up with that last line. Absorbing, processing. Where are you with all this?
Well, as I mentioned in my statement, it is obviously a very emotional time for me, and this is a very emotional process for any survivor of abuse, anybody that's been through these things. To, first of all, I ask people to put themselves in my shoes. You know, you're a kid who has endured sexual abuse, and during those times, I'm looking to somebody like Michael Jackson as a friend, as a big brother figure, and he was that person to me. However, as you're friends with this guy, all of a sudden you start to hear more and more accusations being thrown around by various people, and it comes to a point where, as an advocate for victims, as an advocate for changing the statutes of limitations to make sure that victims' voices are heard, it becomes impossible for me to stay virtuous and not at least consider what's being said and not listen to what the victims are saying. This is very important. We must give them their voice. We must allow them to speak. And therefore, we also must consider all sides of this, even as uncomfortable as that may be.
Got it. Well, let's hit this on a couple fronts. First off, describe your relationship with Michael Jackson. Again, number one, you say nothing ever inappropriate. Beyond that, what was it like?
Yeah, absolutely nothing inappropriate ever happened, and we were friends. I mean, you know, as I said, I have a tape of the two of us hanging out, and when you listen to it, you can hear the innocence in the conversation. But again, I don't want to be perceived as I'm here to defend Michael, because I can no longer do that. I cannot, in good consciousness, defend anyone who's being accused of such horrendous crimes. But at the same time, I'm also not here to judge him, because again, he didn't do those things to me, and that was not my experience. So, therefore, my place is not to be the judge and is not to be the accuser and not to be the defender. My job in this is to focus on what's most important, which is helping to reform the statutes of limitations in every state, because if we can reform the statutes of limitations, we can prevent these things from ever getting to this point. The fact is, I started reporting my molestations to the police in 1993 while they were investigating Jackson for the first time. I've never had a shot at justice. I've never had a chance to bring my predators to the court system. I've never had that opportunity. I'm hoping, after decades-long battle, that through the process of making my own documentary, which I am making right now, and I'm hoping to find a distributor for, we can get my story heard, we can help abolish the statutes of limitations, and I can finally get justice for my own case. So I think it's extremely important that we all take a pause and listen to all victims right now. And I certainly want to apologize if anybody took anything that I said out of context in those tweets, because it certainly wasn't meant in any way to question the validity of the victims.
Got it. Real quick, did you watch both parts of Leaving Neverland?
I watched the first part. To be honest with you, it was very emotional. It was very painful, and I couldn't watch all of it.
Got it. Well, we're going to play, if it's okay with you, just a short clip. This is James Safechuck talking. And he's talking about kind of a marriage ceremony he had with Michael. So we'll take that in, and then we'll just talk about, again, some of the things you went through watching this, and of course, specifically to this. So again, this is HBO's Leaving Neverland. Here it is.
We were like this married couple. And I say married because we had this mock wedding ceremony. We did this in his bedroom, and we like filled out some vows. It's like we're bonded forever. It felt good. And the ring is nice. It has a row of diamonds with a gold band. The wedding ring.
James Safechuck, you can tell he's still processing. So you hear that story. They both tell compelling stories. What were some of your reactions and thoughts, Corey?
Shocking and disturbing. I mean, there's nothing else that can be said for it other than shocking and disturbing. So very compelling stories, and both of these guys sound very believable because they are talking about a cycle that's called grooming, and the grooming cycle, the grooming process certainly fits the mold. And that is why this case must be taken seriously. That's why all cases must be taken seriously. And again, you know, my issue when I wrote those tweets was with, you know, the way that the documentary had laid it out, because as a filmmaker, I was making a judgment in the sense that I know to stay journalistically proper, to stay true to form, we must investigate all sides. So I know certainly to have credence in my own film, we are going above and beyond to make sure that we reach out to the people that we are accusing and also to people that knew those people. And I think that you have to have a well-rounded conversation. So I think that's all I was trying to say. And I really hope that, you know, with all of this, raising this awareness, thank God that they're doing this and getting it out there. And all I can say is I wish it had happened while Michael was alive so that he could have been in trial and faced it and defended himself. That can't happen today. So I don't know where this leads, but I do know that it's important that we keep talking and we keep hearing each voice of each victim.
Yeah, and we should say this, that James Safechuck, who we just heard from a moment ago, and Wade Robson, who was featured in the film, had both given earlier sworn statements. They were never molested by Michael
Correct.
Jackson, and the Jackson family says that Michael Jackson never molested anyone, and Michael Jackson himself says, and also denies any inappropriate relationships with children. But back to you and you watching this. Again, you said you watched part one. What were the conflicting emotions? Did you begin with the premise, these guys are not telling the truth, to the point of, uh-oh, I need to rethink this? Has it been that kind of process for you?
Well, I would never come out initially thinking that anybody is lying, because obviously you can't even open the door to it and watch it if you're not going to come and do it with an open and you know, kind of an open-ended interpretation of what you're about to witness. So I would never go into something assuming they're lying. But that said, you know, as I'm watching it, I'm going, this doesn't make sense to me. This isn't the guy that I knew. But look, I'm a guy that at 14 years old was molested, did have a pedophile completely lie to me about who he was. I trusted him, I believed in him as a friend, and I thought he was a good person, and then he molested me. So it all proves that I'm not the best judge, and that's why I shouldn't be the judge in this situation, and especially given the fact that I'm so close to him. Again, if it was my brother, if it was my own flesh and blood, and all of these horrible accusations were being said against him, I would not be able to judge it. I would have to stand back and go, you know what, I have to look at all sides. And if my brother is guilty of something, then I'm going to condone it and I'm going to go against it, because what matters most is that we preserve the innocence of children. The children must come first, and we must do God's work in protecting our children on this planet. It is the most important thing. So I have to bring it back to, please help me in my fight to abolish the statute of limitation in every state so that we can get victory and justice for all survivors of sexual abuse. And there is a lot of it. It is out there in a massive way. If we really start to recognize the amount of kids that have been abused in the system and ignored, it's staggering. So yeah, we got to focus on making this better. We've got to get justice for these kids, for all kids.
Well, Corey, thanks again. Corey Feldman, thanks for being here, sharing your thoughts and your emotions as you go through this. And I would like to say that the Jackson estate is suing HBO over the documentary, Leaving Neverland. And I also want to note that HLN and HBO share the same parent company, Warner Media.